The wedding dress was not hers. Julia,
You will go.
everyone called her, stood in the hallway outside the grand reception room of the Mok family estate, staring at the ivory gown that had been tailored for her stepsister Allison's body, not hers. It was 2 sizes smaller at the waist and 3 centimeters too short. She had pinned it, tucked it, and breathed in so hard she thought her ribs would cave. But she was wearing it, because Allison was not here. Allison had run. 3 hours ago. With the chauffeur. Julia pressed her back against the cold wall and let out a slow breath through her nose. Outside these walls, somewhere in the sprawling Mok compound, somewhere between the manicured gardens and the fleet of black cars and the dozen stone-faced men in dark clothing, was Mok Ye-chan. The man she was about to marry. The man her stepsister had taken one look at, heard the words wheelchair and paralyzed from the waist down, and decided she would rather disappear than spend a single day beside. Their father, Chief Kareem, had not chased Allison. He had turned to Julia. "You will go," he said. Just like that. For words. "You will go." As if she were luggage being redirected to a new destination. And Julia, 23 years old, the quiet one, the one everyone forgot was in the room, had looked at her father's desperate eyes and understood something cold and true. The Kareem family owed the Mok family a debt so enormous that even she, the daughter nobody talked about at dinner parties, was now the only coin left to spend. She had said yes. She still did not fully understand why. The doors opened. The room beyond was not what Julia expected. No flowers, no guests throwing rice. This was not that kind of wedding. It was a contract ceremony, formal, quiet, witnessed by exactly 6 people. 2 Mok family lawyers, 2 family elders in traditional Korean dress, her father, and 1 woman named Madame Cha In-young who had looked Julia up and down the moment she arrived and said, in clipped English, "She will do." High praise, apparently. Julia walked forward. And there, at the head of the long table, beside a floor-length window that poured afternoon light across the room, was Mok Ye-chan. She had been told he was 30 years old. She had been told he had been in a car accident 18 months ago that had left him unable to walk. She had been told he was the head of the Mok organization, which her father described carefully as a business conglomerate, but which everyone else whispered about as something far less clean than that. What she had not been told was that he was watching her with the sharpest, most unreadable eyes she had ever seen in her life. Not cold, not warm, just watching, like a man who had already decided something and was simply waiting for the world to catch up to his conclusion. He was in a wheelchair, yes. Dressed simply, dark shirt, no tie. His hands rested on the arms of the chair with a stillness that felt deliberate. He was lean. His jaw was set. There was a scar along his left cheekbone, thin as a thread, and it made him look like a man who had survived something he refused to discuss. Julia stopped 3 feet away from him. His eyes did not drop, did not scan her the way men usually scanned her, measuring, comparing, finding her lacking against some imaginary standard. He just looked at her face. Directly. Steadily. "You are not Allison," he said. His English was precise. No stumble. "No," Julia said. "I am her stepsister. Julia Kareem. I go by Julia." A pause. 1 heartbeat. 2. "I know who you are," Mok Ye-chan said. Julia blinked. "That was unexpected. You graduated top of your business class at Miriam University," he continued, his voice even. "You worked 2 internships simultaneously your 3rd year. You speak 4 languages. You have never been in trouble." He tilted his head just slightly. "Your stepsister, by contrast, has been in trouble 11 times that I am aware of, and I am only aware of the ones that were reported." Julia stared at him. "I did my research on the Kareem family," Ye-chan said. "I researched all of you. I was informed I would be marrying Allison." Something shifted in his expression, not quite amusement, but close. "I am not disappointed with the change." Chief Kareem, standing to the side, exhaled like a man who had been holding his breath since sunrise. Julia did not exhale. She was still processing. "You knew about me?" she said. "I know about most things," Ye-chan said simply. "Shall we begin?" The ceremony took 11 minutes. Julia signed papers. Ye-chan signed papers. The lawyers stamped things. The elders nodded. Her father did not meet her eyes once, and she had stopped expecting him to a long time ago, so that was fine. That was absolutely fine. What was not fine was the moment after, when Madame Cha leaned down and murmured something in Korean to Ye-chan that made every person in the room go very still, and Ye-chan's expression shifted into something she could only describe as controlled storm. He responded in Korean. Quiet. Precise. Madame Cha straightened. She looked at Julia. She said in English, "Welcome to the Mok household. Your role here is simple. You will be present. You will be appropriate. You will not ask questions about things that do not concern you." "And what concerns me?" Julia asked. Silence. Madame Cha looked mildly surprised, as if furniture had spoken. "Your husband," Madame Cha said finally. "Your home. Your image. That is enough." Julia looked at Ye-chan. Ye-chan was looking at Julia. "You may ask me questions," he said. Quietly, like it was just between them, even though 6 other people were standing right there. "About things that concern you." Madame Cha's expression did not change. But something behind her eyes did. Julia filed that away. The Mok compound was in Gyeonggi, not a city, not a place most people pointed to on a map, but a stretch of land so large and walled and private that it felt like its own country. The main house had 22 rooms. Julia counted them later, walking the halls alone, because walking was how she thought, and she needed to think very badly right now. She had a room. A large one. The right word was grand, which was also the right word for overwhelming. The floors were pale wood. The ceiling was high. There were no personal touches anywhere, because this room had been prepared for a guest, not a person. A woman named Dae-yum, young, efficient, with a quick smile she seemed to save for moments when no one senior was watching, brought Julia tea and said she would be Julia's personal assistant within the house. "Personal assistant?" Julia said. "You are the wife of the head of the Mok family," Dae-yum said carefully. "There are duties. Schedules. I will help you." Does Ye-chan have people who help him too?" Dae-yum's expression went carefully neutral. "Mr. Mok manages his own schedule." "Who helps him physically?" "With Mr. Mok," Dae-yum said, and something protective entered her tone. "Does not accept help he has not requested." Julia nodded slowly. Understood. She thought about the way he had held himself in that chair. The absolute stillness of it. Not defeated stillness. Deliberate stillness. Like a man who had decided that if the world was going to look at him and see limitation, he would give the world absolutely nothing else to work with. She understood that, actually. She understood it in her bones. Dinner was served at 7. Julia came down expecting. She did not know what she was expecting. Staff, maybe. A long table with too much space between them. Awkward silence. Instead, she found Ye-chan already at the table, and in front of him was a single open folder, and across from his seat was another open folder, and between them was food, simple, warm, the kind of meal that felt like it had been cooked for people rather than for impressions. "Sit," he said. Not rude. Just direct. She sat. "This," he said, pushing the folder toward her side, "is a summary of the Karim family's current financial position. I assume you already know most of it." Julia looked at the papers. She did know most of it. The debt her father had accumulated through bad investments and worse partnerships over the past 4 years. It was not a small number. It was a number that could swallow a family whole. "Why are you showing me this?" she said. "Because you should know what situation you have walked into," Ye-chan said. "Your father made a deal with my family 3 years ago. Money in exchange for a partnership, a legitimate one on paper. He has not fulfilled his end. The marriage was offered as a stabilizing measure." "A stabilizing measure," Julia repeated. "That's one way to put it." "I am not trying to be cruel," Ye-chan said. "I am trying to be clear. You deserve clarity." She looked at him. "Do you always lead with financial summaries at dinner?" Something small, quick, moved across his face. Not quite a smile. The suggestion of one. "Only when I think the other person can handle it." "And you thought I could?" "You walked in today," he said, "wearing a dress that did not fit you, to marry a man you had never met, to fix a problem you did not create. And you did not cry, you did not argue, and you looked at me like you were trying to solve a puzzle rather than survive one." He picked up his chopsticks. "Yes. I thought you could handle it." Julia was quiet for a moment. "What do you want from this?" she asked. "From me. Specifically." "Right now?" He was already looking at his food. "For you to eat. You have not eaten since this morning." She blinked. "How do you know that?" "You did not touch the refreshments brought to the preparation room. You arrived with nothing except the dress and a small bag. You have the focused, slightly distant look of someone running on adrenaline." He glanced up. "Eat, Julia." It was the first time he had used just her name. She picked up her spoon. 3 days passed. Julia learned the house. She learned which staff members smiled at her genuinely and which ones were watching her with a careful, measuring sort of attention that she did not fully trust. She learned that Ye-chan spent his mornings in a room at the east wing that no one was allowed to enter, and that whatever happened in there, he emerged from it every afternoon looking like a man who had fought something internal and won barely. She learned on the fourth day that the Mok organization was not merely a conglomerate. She learned this because she opened the wrong door. She had been looking for the library. Dayam had described it as left at the second hall, past the painting of the mountains. And she had gone right instead of left and found herself in a room where three men she had never seen before were standing around a table covered in maps and papers, and what she was fairly certain were shipping manifests that had nothing to do with legal cargo. They all looked at her. She looked at them. "I am looking for the library," she said calmly. One of the men, the tallest, moved toward her and she did not step back, which seemed to surprise him. "Mrs. Mok," a voice said from behind her. She turned. Ye-chan had come down the hall in his wheelchair, moving with the quiet, controlled speed she had started to associate with him. No wasted motion, no unnecessary sound. "The library is the other direction," he said. His voice was perfectly even. But his eyes were on the tall man, not on her, and the tall man had taken a step back. "Right," Julia said. "Thank you." She went back down the hall. She found the library. She sat with a book she did not read for 40 minutes. Then the door opened and Ye-chan came in. "You are not going to ask?" he said. "Ask what?" "What was in that room?" Julia set the book down. "I think I already know what was in that room." A pause. "And," he said. "And," she said carefully, "I married you knowing your family's name. I am not naive. But I am also not going to pretend I know enough to have an opinion yet." She met his eyes. "I will say this. I do not want to be kept in the dark. Not about things that could affect me. You said I could ask questions." Ye-chan studied her for a long moment. "Yes," he said. "I did say that." "Then I am asking, is this house safe? Am I safe?" "Yes," he said. No hesitation. "Is my safety contingent on behaving a certain way?" The smallest pause this time. "No." "Okay," Julia said. She picked the book back up. "Then I can work with that for now." Ye-chan did not leave immediately. He stayed in the doorway for a moment longer, in a way that made Julia wonder if he was accustomed to people who did not run, who did not push too hard, who simply stayed and kept going. "You are unusual," he said finally. "I've been told," Julia said and turned a page. By the second week, a rhythm had formed. Not a warm one, not yet. More like two planets that had figured out each other's orbits and were being careful not to collide. Ye-chan worked. Julia explored the estate, helped Dayam organize the household accounts, which were, frankly, a disaster, and Julia could not leave a disaster alone, and read everything she could find about the Mok family's legitimate business holdings. There were plenty of them. Construction, shipping logistics, a chain of medical supply companies. On paper, the Mok name was worth a considerable amount and built on things that were real. The parts that were not on paper, those she was still mapping. She was in the middle of reorganizing the household accounts spreadsheet on her laptop when Ye-chan appeared in the doorway of the small study she had claimed as her own. He looked at her screen without looking like he was looking at it. "You reclassified the estate maintenance expenses," he said. "They were miscategorized," Julia said. "Whoever set up this filing system in 2019 grouped groundskeeping under hospitality and utilities under miscellaneous. I fixed it. I can see that. A beat. It now actually reflects what we spend." Was that not the goal? Previous accountants preferred the older arrangement. "I imagine they did," Julia said evenly. "It made several large transfers very hard to trace." Silence. "I am not accusing you of anything," she added. "I am noting what I found." Ye-chan moved into the room fully. He positioned himself across from her desk, not behind her, not looming. Just present. Most people who notice things like that go quiet about them. "I am not most people." "No," he said. "You are not." He was looking at her in that way again, that steady, puzzle-solving way. She had realized in the past week that it was not a cold look. It was the opposite of cold. It was the look of someone who found something genuinely interesting and was trying to understand it fully before saying so out loud. "My father's debt," Julia said, because she had been thinking about it for days and there was no point in circling. "The real number. The full number. I want to see it." Ye-chan did not look surprised. He pulled a tablet from beside him and set it on the desk facing her. The number was larger than the summary had implied. Julia did not let her face change. She looked at it for a long time. She did the mental math on the interest, the timeline, what it would take to address it through legitimate means. Can it be fixed? She asked. She was not asking if he would fix it. She was asking if it was mathematically fixable. With time and the right restructuring, yes, Ye-chan said. I want to help with that. He tilted his head. You are not responsible for it. I know. She pushed the tablet back. I want to help anyway. I have the skills. I am here. Using the skills I have seems better than walking around being appropriate and present, which is what Madame Cha suggested I focus on. A pause. And then, fully, for the first time, Mok Ye-chan smiled. It was not a large smile. It was not warm in an obvious way. It was the smile of someone who had decided something and was satisfied with the decision. There and gone in about 3 seconds. But Julia saw it, and it stayed with her for the rest of the day. Allison called on a Thursday. Julia was in the garden, the long eastern garden, with the persimmon trees and the stone path, which had become her thinking space, when her phone lit up with her stepsister's name. She almost did not answer. She answered. Julia. Allison's voice was bright, familiar, and absolutely unrepentant. How are you? How is the house? Is it enormous? I heard it is enormous. It is large, Julia said carefully. And the husband? He is, how is he? A pause. Julia thought about what to say. She landed on, he is fine. I heard he is paralyzed, Allison said, and her voice dropped like she was sharing gossip rather than discussing a human being. That he cannot walk. That he is in a chair. He uses a wheelchair, yes. And you are just okay with that? You do not mind. Allison, Julia said quietly, what do you want? A brief silence. Then, Papa is angry with me. I imagine he is. I need you to talk to him. Tell him I had to leave. Tell him it was not about the family honor or the deal. Julia, you have to understand, I could not marry someone like that. Someone who is. Someone who is what? Julia said. Her voice had gone very level. The kind of level that meant she was working hard to keep it that way. You know what I mean? I really don't think I do. So say it. Allison made a small, frustrated sound. Someone who is broken, Julia. Someone who cannot even. Stop, Julia said. Flat. Firm. Do not finish that sentence. I am just being honest. You are being cruel, Julia said, and calling it honesty, which is something people do when they want to feel good about cruelty. She exhaled. I will talk to Papa about reducing his immediate anger. But I am not telling him you were right to leave. You left me in a dress that did not fit me to fix a problem you created. We can talk about the rest of it later. She ended the call. She stood in the garden for a long time after that. She did not hear Ye-chan come out until he was already beside her. And she had started to notice he moved very quietly, not stealthily, but just with the focus of someone who had learned to navigate space precisely, every movement deliberate. You were on the phone, he said. Not a question. My stepsister, Julia said. Ah. He was quiet for a moment, looking at the persimmon trees. What did she want? She wanted me to smooth things over with my father. Julia paused. She also said some things about you. I can imagine. You probably can. Julia turned to look at him. For what it's worth, and you did not ask, so tell me if this is not wanted. I disagree with everything she said. Ye-chan looked at her steadily. She sees a wheelchair, Julia said. I see a man who runs an organization of this size, manages people who are clearly afraid of disappointing him, reads financial documents faster than most people read menus, and noticed I had not eaten on the day we met. She turned back to the trees. Those things have nothing to do with whether someone can walk. A long silence. Julia, he said. Thank you. His voice was different. Not the controlled, measured voice of the man at the desk or the table. Something quieter. Something that sounded like it had not been used in a while. You are welcome, she said simply. The storm came on a Friday night. Not a weather storm. Though it was raining, the kind of Gyeonggi rain that blurred everything beyond the windows into gray shapes and made the house feel sealed from the world. The real storm walked through the front door at 9 in the evening. His name was Mok Dangmin. He was Ye-chan's older cousin, and the moment Julia saw him, she understood something she had not understood before. The Mok organization was not undivided. There were factions. And Dangmin, broad, loud in the way that people are loud when they want to take up more space than they have been given, represented one that did not particularly want Ye-chan at the head of anything. Julia learned all of this in roughly 4 minutes, from the way the staff moved when Dangmin entered, from the way Madame Cha's expression became a closed door, and from the way Ye-chan, who was at the dinner table when Dangmin walked in, went absolutely, completely, deliberately still. Not afraid. Julia had the feeling Ye-chan was not afraid of very much. But aware. Alert in the way that only people who have survived specific types of danger are alert. Dangmin saw Julia and smiled. It was a wide smile that did not reach anywhere near his eyes. "So this is the replacement bride," he said in English, for her benefit, clearly. "The African girl. I heard Allison had better taste than to show up." "Her taste is debatable," Julia said pleasantly. "Mine is not." A beat of surprise. Then Dangmin laughed, a real one, short and sharp. "She has a mouth." "She has a name," Ye-chan said from the table. His voice was quiet. "Use it." Dangmin's smile did not disappear, but something underneath it shifted. He looked at his cousin for a long, measuring moment. Then, "Just visiting, cousin. Do not worry. I will not stay long." He did not stay long. But before he left, he leaned down and said something to Ye-chan in Korean that turned the temperature in the room down about 10 degrees. And then he was gone, and the front door closed, and the rain kept going. Daeum disappeared to the kitchen very quickly. Julia stayed. "What did he say?" she asked. "Nothing you need to worry about. You said I could ask questions." Ye-chan looked at her. A long pause. "He said the organization does not take a paralyzed man seriously. That the only reason the elders have not moved against me is..." He stopped. "Is what?" "Is that a marriage was supposed to demonstrate stability. Seriousness. That I was building something, not falling apart." His voice was even, but each word was placed like it cost something. Allison's refusal was a public embarrassment. It suggested weakness. Dangmin is pointing that out. Julia sat down. Not across from him. Beside him, which was different. "And now," she said. "Is the situation different? Now that I'm here?" Ye-chan looked at her. He looked at her in a way that was direct. Searching. Like he was deciding how honest to be. "It is better," he said finally. "You are, not who they expected. You are more." A pause. That unsettles people like Dangmin more than the original problem did. "Good," Julia said. A very small silence. "You are not frightened," Ye-chan said. It was not quite a question. "I am sometimes," Julia said. "I just do not show it until I am alone." She glanced at him sideways. "You do the same thing." The almost smile again. Faster this time. "Yes," he said. "I do." 2 weeks after Dangmin's visit, Julia found the envelope. It was slipped under her bedroom door in the early morning, when the house was quiet and gray. No name on the front. Just her room number written in small, careful print. Inside was a single sheet of paper. On it, in Korean and then translated below in English, "He is not paralyzed by accident." The car was not a mistake. Ask him who was in the second vehicle. Julia read it twice. Then she folded it, tucked it into her notebook, and went to breakfast like nothing had happened, because reacting before thinking was how people made fatal mistakes, and she was not going to do that. She thought about it all through breakfast, through her morning work session, through lunch. By the afternoon, she had decided she was going to ask him. Not because the note demanded it. Because she had decided in the garden, in the study, over dinner for 2 weeks now, that the only way this was going to be anything worth having was if there was honesty between them, and honesty could not be one-directional. She knocked on the door of his East Wing room. She had never knocked before. A long pause. Then, "Come in." The room was a training room. That was what she had not known. Not an office, not a private sanctuary in the way she had imagined. A room with floor mats, with bars along the walls at precise heights, with equipment that was positioned specifically for a person who used a wheelchair. And Ye-chan he was on the floor, on the mat, doing a movement sequence with his arms and upper body that required extraordinary strength and control, and he was covered in effort, and he looked, for the first time since she had met him, like he had let himself be seen doing something hard. He looked at her. She looked at him. Neither of them said anything for a moment. "You should have told me this room existed," she said finally. "Why?" "Because now I understand you better," she said. "And I think you knew I would, which is probably why you never mentioned it." Ye-chan said nothing. But he moved to his chair, not quickly, but with the same deliberateness she always saw in him, and faced her. "What did you want to ask me?" he said. She showed him the note. She watched him read it. She watched his expression do something complicated and contained, grief and anger, and something older than both, packed into 2 seconds before his face returned to still. "Where did you get this?" he said. His voice was very quiet. Under my door. This morning. He looked up. And you waited all day to show it to me. I was thinking, she said, about whether you would tell me the truth. And about whether it mattered to me if you did. Does it? Yes, she said. It does. She sat down on the bench beside the wall. You do not have to tell me everything. But I want to know, was the accident deliberate? A silence that lasted a long time. Yes, Ye-chan said. He told her. Not everything. She had not asked for everything. But the shape of it. There had been a power struggle within the Mok organization 18 months ago. There were people, including family, who believed Ye-chan was moving the organization in a direction that threatened their income. The car accident had been arranged to remove him. To leave him, at best, unable to lead. It had succeeded in one way. It had failed in another. They thought, Ye-chan said, that I would step down. That the physical limitation would make the leadership untenable. That I would become decorative. Managed by others on my behalf. But you didn't. No. His voice was flat. I did not. Who arranged it? Julia asked. He did not answer. Which was, she understood, itself an answer. The second vehicle in the note, she said carefully. Someone close to you. Someone who is still in this house, Ye-chan said, and his eyes met hers with an intensity that made the air in the room feel different. Heavier, clearer. I have not been able to prove it. Not in a way that would be conclusive. And I cannot move against someone in this family without proof, or I lose the organization entirely. Julia was quiet, processing. Why are you telling me this? She said. You barely know me. Because, Ye-chan said slowly, whoever sent you that note wants you to either leave, which destabilizes me, or accuse me, which destabilizes me differently. They did not expect you to bring it directly to me. He looked at her with something that was almost wonder. No one has brought anything directly to me in a long time. I told you I do not do well with being kept in the dark, Julia said. That cuts both ways. He nodded. Once. Slowly. Then, he said, we have a problem to solve. We do, she agreed. And something between them settled. Not into comfort, not yet, but into something solid. A decision. A direction. Whatever was happening inside these walls, they were going to face it facing the same way. It was Dae-yum who found the second set of documents. She had not been looking for them. She had been filing household papers in the lower archive room, a task that fell to her once a month, and she had found a folder wedged behind a cabinet that should not have been there. She brought it to Julia without opening it, which Julia thought said a great deal about Dae-yum's instincts and intelligence. Julia opened it in her study with the door locked. Inside were shipping records, dated from 14 months ago, 3 months after the accident. Records of cargo that passed through the Mok logistics network, rerouted through 3 proxy companies, ending at destinations that had nothing to do with legitimate trade. And at the bottom of the stack, a single page that was different from the others. A communication. In Korean, but Julia had been working quietly on her Korean since she arrived. Slowly, with the help of a language program on her phone at night, and she could read enough to understand the critical lines. The wife is gone. The accident worked. He is in the chair. Move the schedule forward. T. Dangmin. And below it, a response. Also in Korean. A single line, from a different handwriting. Confirmed. But the Korean arrangement is still active. Deal with the girl first. Julia read that line 3 times. Deal with the girl. She had been in this house for a month. Her hands did not. She was working very hard not to let anything show in her body right now because she could hear footsteps in the hall, and she did not know whose they were. She closed the folder. Set it down on the desk. Breathed. Think. She needed to think. She needed Ye-chan. She found him in the east wing. She knocked. She came in. This time he was at his desk, the proper one, with the screens and the organized chaos of a man who ran large things. And he looked up, and whatever was in her face made him close the laptop immediately and give her his full attention without her having to ask. She put the folder on his desk. She said, I found this in the archive room. Dae-yum found it first and brought it to me. Neither of us read more than necessary. He opened it. She watched him go through it. She watched the controlled storm again. That thing behind his eyes that compressed and did not break through to his expression, but was absolutely, completely present. When he reached the last page, the deal with the girl page, he stopped. He looked up at her. How long have you had this? He said. 20 minutes. You came to me immediately. You are my husband, Julia said. And this involves both of us. Of course I came immediately. Ye-chan looked at her for a long moment. And then, something broke open in his expression. Not the controlled storm. Something underneath it. Something that had been packed away for a very long time behind all that precision and stillness and deliberateness. It was not dramatic. It was quiet. But it was there. I need to make a call, he said. I need you to stay close to the house today. Do not go to the garden. Do not go anywhere that is not the main halls or your room. Can you do that? Yes, she said. And Julia, he stopped. What? I am going to handle this, he said. Not violently. Not the way Dang Min would expect. I am going to end it the right way. But it will be loud for a while. The next few days will be loud. His eyes held hers. I need to know you will not disappear. I need to know you will not disappear. Said simply. Said directly. But she understood what it carried. He had been abandoned by people when they decided he was no longer useful or impressive or able. Her stepsister had run at the first sign of imperfection. His own family had tried to remove him from his own life. I am not Allison, Julia said. I told you that on day one. I know, he said softly. I will not disappear. The loud days came. Ye-chan moved, carefully, strategically, with a patience that Julia had started to understand was one of his most formidable qualities. He contacted the Mok family elders with the documents. Not all at once. He built a case the way someone builds a case who knows that the audience has doubts and the stakes are absolute. Julia helped. She cross-referenced the shipping records against the legitimate logistics data she had been quietly cataloging for weeks. She traced the proxy companies through business registration databases, which were public and entirely legal to access. She built a financial timeline that showed clearly in numbers exactly when the rerouting had started and exactly how much had moved and exactly where it had gone. She handed Ye-chan 37 pages of analysis on the fourth day. He looked at them for a long time. You did this from the estate records? He said. The legitimate business records, yes. Everything I used is either public or was already given to me as part of household management. None of it required access to anything restricted. She had been careful about that. Extremely careful. He paused. This is comprehensive. I told you I could help with the debt restructuring, she said. The same skills apply. He set the papers down. He looked at her. Julia. Yes. Why are you doing this? She thought about it honestly. Because it is right, she said. Because you should not have your own organization stolen from under you by people who did a terrible thing and thought you would not recover. She paused. And because, she stopped. Because you looked at me on our wedding day like I was a person worth seeing, she said. When most people in my life have looked at me like I was a supporting role in someone else's story. And I do not forget that kind of thing. The silence that followed was warm. That was the only word for it. Ye-chan reached across the desk. He took her hand. Not dramatic. Not overwhelming. Just his hand over hers. Steady. Present. Neither do I, he said. Two people who were never supposed to find each other. And yet here they are, building something neither of them planned. Subscribe so you are already here when the next story begins. It was Allison who nearly destroyed everything. Julia had not expected that. She should have. She knew Allison. She knew the way her stepsister operated. Not with malice precisely, but with a total, complete, catastrophic self-focus that treated consequences like things that happened to other people. Allison had come back. Not to the estate. She had been denied entry at the gate, which Julia had quietly arranged as a precaution after the phone call. But she had gone to their father. And their father, still furious and still desperate, had done something that Julia would not have believed if she had not seen the message herself. He had contacted Dang Min. He had told Dang Min that Julia had found documents. That Julia was building a case. That the deal was unraveling. Chief Kareem, her father, had sold her to save himself. Julia read the forwarded message that Ye-chan's security team intercepted at 2 a.m. She read it in her room, sitting on the edge of the bed in the dark. She had known her father was weak. She had known he was desperate. She had known he had sent her here because she was the only piece left on the board he could still move. But this was different. This was not weakness. This was a choice. A deliberate, clear-eyed choice to trade her safety for his own. She did not cry. She had done her crying about her father long ago, privately, in the way that children who grow up in houses where they are not quite the most important person learn to do. Quietly, completely, and then they put it away and they keep going. She kept going. She wrote a single message to Ye-chan. Check your security briefing. My father. I am all right. We need to talk in the morning. His response came in 3 seconds. I already saw it. I'm sorry. Do you need anything right now? She stared at those 4 words. Do you need anything? And felt something unlock in her chest that had been locked for a very long time. No, she wrote back. Just knowing you know is enough. His next message was simply, I know. The confrontation with Dang Min happened 5 days later. Ye-chan called a formal meeting of the Mok elders. Full assembly. The kind of meeting that was called when something fundamental about the organization needed to be decided. Julia was not in the room. She had been told she would not be, and she had accepted that, because this was his world and his family and his fight to lead, and her job had been to build the case, not to prosecute it. She waited in the study. Daeum sat with her. Neither of them spoke much. They drank tea. The clock on the wall counted minutes that felt too heavy. At the 2-hour mark, Julia heard the front door. Footsteps. Multiple sets, rapid, the way feet move when a decision has been made and the execution of it is already underway. At the 2-hour and 20-minute mark, the study door opened. It was Ye-chan. He came in and closed the door behind him, and the expression on his face was complex. Exhausted underneath everything. But underneath the exhaustion, something else. Something settled. Something like a man who has carried a weight for 18 months and has just finally put it down. It is done, he said. Dangmin. Removed from the organization. The elders voted unanimously once the evidence was presented in full. A pause. He will face the appropriate legal consequences. Through proper channels. I made that clear. And the others? The people in the organization who knew. Being addressed. He moved into the room properly. The Mok organization will look different going forward. There will be a restructuring period. It will be difficult. But you are still at the head of it, Julia said. Yes, he said. I am. She exhaled. Your father called me, Ye-chan said carefully. While the meeting was happening, Julia's expression did not change. What did he say? He wanted to renegotiate, to minimize the family's exposure. A pause. I told him the debt restructuring was already in progress, that his family would not be harmed, but that I would not be dealing with him directly going forward. Julia looked at him. Going forward? I told him, Ye-chan said, that his daughter handles the Kareem side of things. That if he wishes to communicate about financial matters, he communicates with you. Julia was very quiet. Is that all right? Ye-chan asked. And it was careful, genuinely asking. Not demanding, not telling, not expecting her to simply accept because he had decided. Yes, she said. That is more than all right. He nodded. Then, there is one more thing. Something in his voice had changed. Not tense. Not serious in the way serious had been for the last several days. Something different. Something that made Julia sit a little more upright. What? She said. Come to the East Wing, Ye-chan said. Now, I want to show you something. The East Wing training room. The mats. The bars along the walls. The equipment she had seen on the day she knocked and came in uninvited and changed something between them without either of them naming it at the time. Ye-chan positioned himself in the center of the room. He looked at her. He looked at her in the way she had come to understand, meant he was about to say something that cost him something to say. I have been doing this, he said, every morning for 14 months. I know, she said. I figured that out. The doctor said, he stopped. Restarted. The doctor said the likelihood of recovery was low. Not impossible. Low. The injury was incomplete. There is sensation, there is some function. It has been. He exhaled. Complicated. And I did not want to perform a recovery for anyone. I did not want it to become a public thing. Something people watched and evaluated and... I understand that, Julia said. I know you do, he said. That is why I am showing you. He looked down. He set both hands on the wheels of the chair, fingers firm. He breathed in slowly. And then, slowly, the way something happens that has been worked toward for months, through pain and stubbornness, and the kind of will that does not announce itself, Mok Ye-chan stood up. Not easily. Not without effort. His legs shook. He had to grip the bar behind him. He was upright for only about 10 seconds before he carefully, deliberately sat back down. But he was upright. He was standing. Julia felt something move through her. Not surprise, not quite. Something bigger than surprise. Something that sat right at the place where hope and the recognition of something you did not know you had been waiting for come together. She did not make a sound. She did not clap or exclaim. She just looked at him. He was watching her face. "It is not complete," he said. I cannot simply walk. Not yet. Maybe not fully, ever. The doctors say maybe 60, 70% function over time with continued work." He paused. "I am telling you because I am your wife," she said quietly. "Because you are my wife," he agreed. "And you have been here for a month, building cases and reorganizing accounts, and looking at me like I was a complete person from the very first day. And you deserve to know." Julia stood up from the bench where she had been sitting. She crossed the room. She stood in front of him. She held out her hand. He took it. They stood there for a moment, her standing, him seated, both of them occupying the same space with the particular honesty of two people who had chosen each other against every pressure that said not to. "You are going to walk again," Julia said. "Fully. I don't have any doubt about that. I've seen how you work." "You have known me for 1 month," he said. There was that almost smile again. "I have seen how you work," she repeated. 1 month is enough to know that." He looked at her. That long, steady, puzzle-loving look that she had come to like more than she had words for yet. "Julia," he said. I would like," he paused. "I would like this to be a real marriage. Not a contract. Not a stabilizing measure. I would like to build something actual with you. If that is something you would want." The room was quiet. The late afternoon light came through the high windows and made everything in it look possible. "I would want that," Julia said. Simply. Directly. Very much. 3 months later. The restructuring of the Mok organization's legitimate side was well underway. Julia was officially the head of the Mok Financial Consulting Division. A new arm, built from nothing, her idea, her project. She had hired 3 people. She planned to hire 10 by year's end. Her father had called twice. She had answered both times. The conversations were short, careful, civil. Not warm. That would take longer, and she was not sure how much of it would ever return. But civil was something. Civil was a start. Allison had sent a message that was so full of casual, unaware audacity that Julia had read it twice just to make sure she was reading it correctly. Allison wanted to visit. To see the house. To reconnect. Julia had written back, "Not yet. I'll let you know when. Small things." Julia in the garden in the mornings. Ye-chan in the training room. The two of them at dinner, talking about the organization, about her work, about things that had nothing to do with either. History, languages, the particular and specific opinions Ye-chan had about architecture, which were strong and detailed and made her laugh at unexpected moments. The almost smile had started appearing more often. Sometimes it was a full one. She was collecting them. He had walked to the end of the East Wing Hall and back on a Tuesday. He had told her at dinner, not making a ceremony of it. "I made it to the end of the hall today." She had said, "How did it feel?" He had considered it. "Like something coming back," he said. "The way warmth comes back to a hand that's been cold." She had thought about that for a long time after. Something coming back. The way warmth comes back. "Yes," Dayam said. And then, abandoning neutrality completely, she smiled. A full one, the kind she saved, and her eyes were bright. He did not say anything else. Julia changed her shoes. She went to the main garden, the large formal one at the front of the estate, with the long stone path that ran the full length of it, bordered by winter-bare trees that in spring would be extraordinary. Ye-chan was at the start of the path. He was standing. Without the bar. Without the chair, it was behind him, present, not abandoned, but behind him. He was standing on the stone path with both feet and the focused, deliberate stillness of a man who was doing something that had taken 14 months and would take more time still to come fully back, but who was here, upright, in the cold autumn air, waiting. Julia stopped. He looked at her. "I wanted to walk to the end of the path," he said. His voice was even, but underneath it was something immense and held. "I wanted to do it with you." Julia walked to his side. She did not offer her arm in a way that suggested he needed it. She just fell into step beside him, close, so that if he needed something to reach for, she was there. He took the first step. Then the next. They walked. Slowly. The stone path under their feet. The winter trees on either side. The cold and clean Gyeonggi air around them. Neither of them spoke, because there was nothing that needed to be said that the walking was not already saying. At the end of the path, Ye-chan stopped. He breathed. He turned to look at her, and the thing in his face, uncontained, for the first time fully uncontained, was not triumph, though it was that too. It was something older and quieter. The face of someone who has held on through the dark and arrived somewhere real. "You're here," she said. "Just that." "We're here," he said. And Julia, who had worn a dress that did not fit, who had been sent to fix a problem she did not make, who had walked into a house of locked doors and watching eyes and had simply, quietly, persistently opened every single one, smiled. Not the polite smile she had spent years perfecting. The real one. The one she saved. He saw it. And Mok Ye-chan, standing at the end of a garden path in the gray November light, smiled back. The first gift was not planned. Julia had mentioned it once, only once in passing, during one of their dinners, that she had been looking for a specific edition of an economics textbook she had used during her final year at Miriam University. Her copy had been left behind in the rush of everything, and this particular edition had annotations by the original author in the margins, which made it different from every reprint that came after. She had mentioned it the way people mention things they do not expect anyone to actually hear. Casually, between one topic and the next, moving on before the sentence had fully landed. 3 days later, Dae-yum brought a package to her study. Inside, wrapped in plain brown paper and tied with a simple cord, was the book. Not a new copy. The original edition, the exact one, with the author's name stamped on the inside cover in faded ink. There was no note. There did not need to be one. Julia sat with it for a long moment, running her thumb along the spine. She brought it to Ye-chan's office that evening. She held it up. He looked at it, then at her, with the expression she had come to read as his version of yes. That was deliberate. "How?" she said. "I have resources," he said simply. "You remembered me saying that." "I remember most things." "You remembered that specifically." A pause. That almost smile. "I remembered everything you have said at dinner since you arrived." "Is that strange?" Julia looked at him for a moment. "No," she said. "It is the opposite of strange." She set the book down on the edge of his desk. "Thank you, Ye-chan." He looked at his name in her mouth. Not literally, but there was something in the way his expression settled when she used it, like a key finding the right lock. "You are welcome, Julia." The drive happened on a Wednesday when neither of them had planned anything. Ye-chan appeared at the door of her study at 10 in the morning and said, "Come. I want to show you something outside the compound." He said it the way he said most things, as a statement, not quite a question, but with enough space after it that she understood she could say no if she wanted to. She did not want to. They took one of the smaller cars, just a driver and the two of them, no convoy, no entourage. Ye-chan had insisted on that, she would later learn, over the strong objection of his security team. The compromise had been a second car at a discreet distance. The drive took 40 minutes, winding through the Gyeonggi countryside where the hills rolled in long, pale curves and the sky was the kind of wide gray that somehow felt open rather than heavy. Julia watched it all from the window and did not try to make conversation, and Ye-chan sat beside her and also did not try to make conversation, and somehow the silence between them was easy. The kind that only happens between people who have stopped performing for each other. He took her to a traditional market that spread across 2 streets in a small town she did not know the name of. It was busy in the cheerful, unhurried way of places that have been busy for 100 years and expect to be busy for 100 more. Color everywhere, fabric and dried pepper and stacked ceramics and vendors who called out in Korean over each other's heads. Ye-chan navigated it in his wheelchair with the same deliberate efficiency he brought to everything. Julia walked beside him. People looked. Of course people looked at her, at him, at the two of them together, and she had made her peace with being looked at a long time ago, so she looked back pleasantly and kept moving. He bought her a ceramic bowl. Small, deep blue, glazed in a pattern that looked like moving water. The vendor, an older woman with extraordinarily fast hands, said something in Korean and glanced between them with an expression that was unmistakably fond. "What did she say?" Julia asked as they moved on. "She said the blue matches your personality," Ye-chan said. He kept his eyes forward. "My personality?" "Deep and full of movement," he said. "Very evenly." Julia looked at him sideways. His profile was perfectly composed, but the tips of his ears, she noticed, had gone slightly pink. She decided not to comment on that. She bought him something too, a small carved wooden figure she found at a stall near the end of the second street. It was a person in mid-stride, 1 foot forward, the weight of the whole figure leaning into the next step. She did not explain why she chose it. She simply handed it to him. He looked at it for a long time. "I like this," he said quietly. "I know," she said. The language lesson started by accident and became something they both protected fiercely. Julia had been practicing her Korean one evening in the sitting room. Working through a phrase she kept getting wrong, the vowel sound flattening where it should have risen. When Ye-chan passed through and stopped. "You are pronouncing the second syllable too short," he said. "I know. I cannot make my mouth do it correctly." He sat down. "Try again." She tried again. He listened. He corrected. Not impatiently, but with the careful attention of someone who found the mechanics of language genuinely interesting. She tried a third time and got it almost right, and the satisfaction of that small precision was unexpectedly large. That was how Tuesday evenings became language evenings. Julia's Korean, which had been functional and awkward, began to develop actual shape. And in exchange, because Julia had insisted on exchange, because this had to go both ways, Ye-chan worked on his Igbo. This was considerably more difficult. Ye-chan approached it the way he approached everything, with total seriousness and zero room for discouragement. He was not naturally gifted at the tonal aspects, and he knew it, and knowing it did not make him quit, it made him practice harder. Julia watched him work through a single phrase for 15 minutes with the focus of someone diffusing something very small and very complicated, and she felt something that she would later decide was a very specific and very particular kind of admiration. When he finally got it right, the tone landing correctly, the sound sitting in the right place, he looked at her. She nodded. That was right. He exhaled through his nose. Good. You have been working on that one phrase for. I am aware of how long I have been working on it. I was going to say it is impressive. A pause. It is one phrase. It is a phrase in a language you did not speak 3 weeks ago, Julia said. Give yourself the point. He looked at her. Do you keep points? I am starting to, she said. The evening of the first rain of proper winter, Julia brought a blanket to the large veranda and sat watching the rain come down over the garden in thick, even sheets. She had not told anyone she was going there. She had just gone. 20 minutes later, Ye-chan appeared. He had a second blanket. He had also, it emerged, told Dae-yum to bring tea, which arrived 4 minutes after he did, which meant he had thought ahead enough to ask before coming out, which meant he had known she was there and had made a small, quiet decision to join her rather than leave her to it. She did not say any of this out loud. She simply made room on the wide bench so he could position himself beside it. They drank tea and watched the rain. This is my favorite kind of evening, Julia said eventually. Why? It feels like permission, she said. Like the whole world is agreeing that nothing urgent is required right now. Ye-chan was quiet for a moment. Then, I did not have many evenings like that. Before the accident, I was always, he considered the word, moving, managing. There was always something that required immediate attention. And now I have learned, he said slowly, that some of the things I believed were urgent were actually just noise. And some of the things I thought could wait, he stopped. What? Some of the things that can actually wait are the ones worth having, he said. He was looking at the rain, not at her. I did not know that before. Julia thought about that. The accident taught you that? The recovery did, he said. The accident just stopped everything long enough for me to see it. The rain came down. The tea was warm. Neither of them moved. I am glad you are here, Ye-chan said. Plainly, without decoration. Julia looked at him. The side of his face in the low light, the rain sound wrapping around everything. I am glad I am here too, she said. I did not expect to be when I arrived. But I am. He started leaving things at her door. Not every day. That would have been too much, and Ye-chan understood proportion in a way most people did not. But occasionally. A book he had finished that he thought she would argue with. A printout of an article about a financial restructuring case in a country she had mentioned being interested in. Once, and this was the one that made her stand in the hallway for a full minute before picking it up. A small potted persimmon seedling in a clay pot, with a note in his precise handwriting that said only, for the study. You spend enough time in there. She put it on the windowsill. She checked it every morning. She did not tell him that. He probably knew anyway. The day they went to the exhibition was Dae-yum's idea, which she presented to both of them separately and with such careful neutrality that Julia suspected she had planned the whole thing. The exhibition was at a cultural center 2 towns over. Traditional Korean ink paintings, 50 works across 4 rooms, put together by a foundation that had been running for 30 years. Ye-chan had donated to this foundation, Julia learned on the way there, and had been doing so for several years without attending any of their events because, as he said without elaboration, He had not had the right company for it before. She turned that sentence over in her mind and kept it. The exhibition was extraordinary. Not loud. Not in the way exhibitions sometimes are when they are trying too hard to impress. Just precise. Each painting given enough space to breathe. The ink on paper doing things that seemed impossible for such a simple medium. Depth, movement, the sense of wind in a brushstroke. They went through the room slowly. Ye-chan knew the history of several of the works and shared it. Not lecturing, but the way a person shares something they genuinely love, with the slightly unguarded energy that only comes out when the subject is real. Julia asked questions. He answered them. She pushed back on one interpretation. The third room, a large landscape piece, and he considered her argument with the complete seriousness he gave every argument, and then said, "You may be right," in a tone that suggested this genuinely surprised him and that he was pleased by it. In the fourth room, in front of the largest piece, a mountain scene, ink on silk, the mountain emerging from fog in gradations of gray so careful they looked like breathing. They were both quiet for a long time. "This one," Julia said finally. "Yes," Ye-chan said. "This one." They did not explain to each other what they meant. They did not need to. The photography happened because Julia had a small camera, old film-based, the kind that required actual thought before every shot because each frame cost something. And she had been using it to document the estate in the way she documented everything, which was quietly and thoroughly and without making a fuss about it. Ye-chan noticed it one morning. "You take photographs. I like having evidence that things were real," she said. He was quiet for a moment. "Then, take one of the garden. The eastern end, where the persimmon trees are heaviest." She did. She also took one of him, though she did not announce it, just raised the camera while he was looking at something beyond the frame. The winter light falling across the side of his face, his expression fully unguarded in the way it only was when he thought no one was watching. When the film was developed weeks later and she showed him the prints, he looked at that particular photograph for a long time. "You should have told me you were taking it," he said. "You would have arranged your face." A pause. "Yes," he said. "I would have." "This one is better," Julia said simply. He looked at it again. At himself, unguarded, in the winter light. She watched him see what she saw when she looked at him. Not the controlled, deliberate surface, but the person underneath it, the one who was building something real and knew the cost of it and kept going anyway. He did not say anything, but he kept the photograph. On the last evening of that year, the night quiet, the compound still, the sky outside swept clean and full of stars that appeared in the cold the way they never quite managed in warmth. Julia found a small box on her desk. Inside was a bracelet. Not extravagant. Simple, dark cord, a single bead of celadone green that matched exactly the glaze of the ceramic bowl from the market. The kind of thing that required someone to remember something, and then to find the right maker, and then to wait for the right moment. She put it on. She went to find him. He was on the main veranda, looking out at the garden. The stars above the bare winter trees. Everything very still. She sat beside him. She held up her wrist. He looked at it. He looked at her. "It fits," he said. "It fits perfectly," she said. And they stayed there as the year turned. Not talking, not needing to, two people who had come to each other through chaos and come out the other side into something quiet and solid and entirely their own. Watching the stars over the Gyeonggi Hills as the night moved slowly, steadily forward into whatever came next. Julia chose to stay when everyone else walked away. And look what that decision built. Stories like this one are waiting for you every week. So subscribe and make sure you never miss one. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that the right person always stays. Leave a comment below and tell us what you thought. We read every single one.